Okay, so welcome back to the Better Learning Podcast. I'm Carla Cummins, your host today. I'm excited to be joined today by my guest co-host, Victoria Morlan, our business director, or our business development director of K-12 for our East Coast. So today we're thrilled to be joined by Don Baus from Little Architecture. But this just isn't a conversation about school design. We're diving into something deeply meaningful. Don recently selected the film title of the conversation, Stand and Deliver, and we're here to unpack the powerful story behind it, the message it carries, and how it connects to the world and education and environments that we create every day in our jobs. So it's about purpose, it's about passion.
Stay awake as you're waking up. Wake up this morning, how are you? Bring toothpicks to pinch open your eyes.
Can we talk about sex?
We discuss sex, I have to give sexual homework.
I wouldn't do that if I was you. I'd lose a finger, I won't be able to count to 10.
At a tough school, someone had to take a stand, and someone did. Now the critics stand up and cheer for Stand and Deliver. Terrific, tremendous, gripping and compelling, more exciting than La Bamba. Almost gives a wonderful performance, declares Jack Kroll, Newsweek. Enormously inspiring and very rewarding. Almost gives the first great performance of the year. Jeffrey Lyons, sneak previews. And Pat Collins, WWOR-TV, says, stand up and cheer for a movie with heart. It's the Rocky of the classroom. Edward James Olmos.
Nethead.
Lou Diamond Phillips.
So you picked Stand and Deliver. Why does the movie stand out to you specifically?
This movie I grew up with, but it was always a sort of underdog movie, and I thought it's really inspirational in how, in this case, Jaime Escalante really brought a group of kids who were under-resourced, but also to some degree just thought not much of, and he brought them up to find their very best.
Well, and you see it too. It's almost like the forgotten school. I felt like, when he shows up to his first day and he's like, hey, I'm here to teach computers. I think that's what he said anyways.
Right.
And the woman who was in the front office is like, hey, come with me. Like, we don't have resources for a computer. So you're walking into this class with no actual academic tools in order to deliver education to a class that clearly doesn't want to be there and doesn't necessarily see the value in education, with the exception of the one kid who was sitting in the front, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So interesting is that when he first walked into the classroom to greet his students, they were in the front, and the one student, and he said, "You're going to go to the back, and we're going to bring these guys to the front to sit up here." And he was like, "Well, I got here first." so he was like that student, and I feel like sometimes I'm that student. But anyway, but I thought that was lovely that he was like, "Look, I know you want to be here, but we need to bring these guys up so they can." Learn a little bit more about why I'm here. Basically.
And those were the Spanish only speaking students. So he could recognize them and pulled them up front. So,
well, and how great was it that he spoke Spanish? Because, although it seemed like it was a predominantly Hispanic student population based on geography and everything else. Like, when we look at the movie, right? Like, first impressions of it were what, right? When you walk away from it and you're going, okay, this was so impactful, what was the first impression that you had?
It was inspirational that he was able to do that with those kids. I come from a family of teachers, including my wife, and those kids need somebody who can relate to them. And that got them, to a great degree, pulled them along because he showed them a certain stern respect. And to dismiss them would not have accomplished anything. It was just, very inspirational in the end. And you saw that when they came to the end, and their results were doubted. That was sort of the position they were in until he came along.
I think his approach was really interesting too, because I felt, he came in, and because they were so used to teachers not really paying attention to what their message was or what they needed, he came in creatively with the hat on, the knife, the apple, just to sort of get their attention. And I found and get them engaged. And they thought, well, I've never seen this before. What is this guy doing? And so I think that was sort of the beginning of them saying, hey, maybe we should probably pay attention to what he's doing for us. So,
well, he not only made practical examples of simple math, because they were coming at it from all directions. No little math, no English. But he also tied it to their heritage by mentioning that, the idea of zero comes from the Mayans, and that was their,
Yes.
their lineage. And that kind of right away was making it about them.
Yeah, I'm a sucker. The reason why I was excited when Victoria told me your choice, Don, was because I'm like, I love like real life stories, right? And this was a true story of what is it, Jaime Escalante, who lived in East LA, who left a high paying job. Was it in tech or something? I don't know what it was in, but I'm guessing it was in technology, but to go back to education to prove something, like we're missing something, and we can take real life experiences and put them in front of these students, and we can make a difference. And so the whole concept of motivation, hard work, it can rewrite the destinies of the kids that we sit in front of every single day that society is going to write off. But to be able to recognize and to say, like, I can make an impact in one kid's day or in one kid's life was so different. And plus it won so many awards. I think he got Best Actor.
He was nominated. I don't think he got it that year, but he was certainly nominated for an Academy Award.
Well, so when we look at we break it down into some categories for conversation, right? And the award categories are, let me pull it up. So John Keating Award. So discuss the standout teacher or mentor character in the movie that makes them memorable. Are they realistic or idolized? And could they exist in a real school setting? So obviously, right, the whole thing is, hello.
Yeah, it's based on a real story, right?
Yeah. But I think that there were other ones too. You have the principal who was sitting there in that meeting, and he's like, we're about to lose. I don't remember what it was, but if it was their accreditation, and what are we going to do about it? And, the conversation that was taking place there was like real conversation. I mean, it might be a different topic of conversation that our administrators sit in every day, but ultimately it's the same thing. We're going to lose this if we don't get it together. And if we aren't, performing the way that we have to. Now it relates to like test scores. Our test scores aren't where they should be. Like, how is this happening?
And the math.
And having to get creative with their resources, like having the teachers that were teaching phys ed or another course, they were brought in to teach those fundamental essential courses so that way they could get that accreditation. And
right. And the simple answer too often is teach to the test, it would appear. But when the math chair in that case, said we're doing everything we can, Jaime's the one who said, well, I can do more. And that's where he said, we're going to raise the standard, and they were going to rise to meet it. And it was a different paradigm. You're not teaching to the lowest in this case, and that's probably a redo because I don't want to use that word. But you're not teaching to the lowest one in the class. You're raising the bar for them all.
Yeah. So I think too, the other thing that for me, he just was not intimidated by anyone and would just say like whatever, and he's like, oh, you touch that, you're going to lose a finger, right? And you have these cholos who come in and they're all tough, and he's like, don't do it. But I think, like, I would imagine based on that, he probably was raised in a similar environment, or maybe he was educated in a similar atmosphere. I don't necessarily know. But I think that, that teacher who's just that stern force to be reckoned with is sometimes what we need. I know as a student, I wasn't the best one. I needed that person to be like, no, sister, you're not getting away with this. So,
and he challenged them too. I think it was interesting because, he wanted them to keep their commitments and otherwise have a nice day, and he would really hold them to the task, but then otherwise, then you're out. And then Angel was like, look, I really, like, I do want to do this. Can I get a book 3? Because I don't want to be seen carrying these math books around for his own reputation. But he, in his heart, really wanted it. And the thing that really resonated with me is that we don't know where our students come from, their lives, at home. we assume when we see students in school that, they're just students. They're people, they're human, and they take care of their families. And especially this particular community, they leaned on one another because they had parents that had to work multiple jobs, and they had lots of siblings, and so their home lives were not, they were very challenging.
Well, so another award category that we have that kind of brings it up, Victoria, is the cliques, right? So what iconic stereotypes were reinforced in the movie? So like similar to nerds or bullies, jocks. So does the movie embrace or, make them subservient? And then why are they still relevant? And I don't know. So when I honestly, I started rewatching it this afternoon. I went to an opening general session at this conference and then came back up here myself. And I was like, what the hell are they wearing? And some of their hair, the guy's like got his hair.
This was the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
But it absolutely, in a manner, celebrated all the types because everyone was treated almost completely the same, from the nerd in the front row to, for lack of a better word, the prep who work in her family's restaurant. We got the guy that's all about cars, and then you got the Angel and Chuko, who's all about the gang life. And Angel's like trying to border them both. He wants to learn, but he doesn't want to be seen as a learner. So, but it really, and I don't think it really discounted anyone in that. Everyone came to it with their own ideas, own personas, and he got through to them all.
He definitely did. So do you feel like there's one character that stole the show? So it may not have been like a major role, but they did get a lot of attention.
For me, it was Angel, and with Lou Diamond Phillips, it was a very subtle play that he was able to convey that, it's a yearning to learn, but having to ride that tough guy image the whole time. But it didn't stand out so much that it, overshadowed everyone else. But it did show two sides of the same person. To me, it was a brilliant point for Jaime to give him 3 books so he could learn the way he needed to learn and not be worried with all that baggage. And that's something I think we could need to address a little bit better sometimes.
Absolutely. I think he was my standout one too. And I think too, you have the scene where he's taking care of his grandma, right? Like, and the care and concern and intention, or was it his grandma or his mom, whichever it was, I don't remember.
His grandmother.
Like the care and concern, like he had to be there for her. He's studying, he hears her coughing, he goes over and he covers her with a blanket. But then, you cut to that scene and he's just right out there on the streets, where you're supposed to be when you're in a gang or whatever they were, right? It's implied to be a gang, but you're just out there. But here he was just doing his homework. He's taking care of his grandma. And then now he's out there for the streets. So
it really showed the other side that you don't see when see these students in school, and you don't know necessarily.
Yeah. Do you think that there was one iconic classroom moment or like dance or event that took place or a scene that was impactful?
There's too many.
There's a lot.
Yeah. I thought the 3 books was just impactful just because I kind of recognized how that he could have, pushed them off, but instead he just, gave them more than he asked for. I have to keep thinking about it. Some will come back to me, but that one just kind of really was significant to me in particular. There were so many others that he just showed a stern compassion for those kids.
Well, I don't know if it was a classroom moment per se, but I do think it was the moment where they were sitting around the school officials, right? The teachers, the principal, whoever were sitting around, and they're just like, we're going to lose this. And they looked at Jaime and he's like, I can do more. And I think that his intention and direction kind of changed it. And I don't necessarily think, right, how did it capture or exaggerate real life school? I don't necessarily think it does, but I do always think that there's like one standout educator who's able to, not one, but there are standout educators who are able to reach students in a different way and connect with them on a deeper level that, pushes them into a different type of learning and a different experience altogether. And I think that Jaime was that one.
Right.
Also, too, there was the fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he grabbed Angel to keep him out of it. Yeah.
yeah, like don't do it. And so to be able to see that he had different motives with Angel was one too, which I mean, we keep talking about him, but so I guess he is that guy who stole the show, right?
But I mean, those kids, I mean, sometimes all they want is respect that they don't get. And they're fighting for it in the way they, the persona they take or the way they're acting. But if you just show them that respect on at their level, so to speak, then they respond because it shows you care. And that's something they don't necessarily get, especially in that kind of situation where everybody's kind of seems against them.
Okay, so we also have not just the homecoming scene, but the one-liner. So what line or dialogue that has stood the test of time? So share the most memorable, funny, heartfelt quotes as they resonated within the movie.
Jaime, students will rise to the level of expectation. All we need is Ghana's desire.
Yeah, and that's a great quote though, because you have to think about it. I mean, no matter what, whether or not you're a parent, you're a teacher, you're pushing them to that next level. And so to be able to recognize that. But I think, who did he say that to? He said that to his fellow educators, right?
He said that to Senior Molina, who was the math chair.
And that to me, like, I felt like those teachers seemed a little defeated. It was just like, well, we're just going to make the best with what we are. And they weren't pushing anything. It's like, this is where we're at. What are you talking about? Like, we're trying to teach to students who come in, they're illiterate, they're this, they're that. We get them this way. We can't do anything else for them. And I think that statement right there resonates with, like, what the heck? No, that's not true. Right? Like, we need to set different expectations and different standards for our students. And it starts here. Right.
Right. And if
Absolutely.
if you expect more of them, then they start to believe in themselves.
Yeah. Well, he even said that to the principal. He said it starts from the top down. Like, it starts here. So we have to be the ones to help them through that. If we can't do it ourselves, then how do we have the expectations for them to do this? So we have to lead, in that way. And the other thing that this is the quote that I found is, you are the dreamers, and accomplish wonderful things through those dreams. And he said that towards the end of the movie, which was really, heartfelt. So you could tell he really believed in them.
Yeah. And then Victoria, you mentioned the one about them driving in the car. What was that?
Oh, that one was, all you see is the turn and not the road ahead.
Well, there's a bigger plan at play too, right? Mm-hmm. If we really think about it and where you want to get, I mean, there's going to be a lot of turns to get there, but.
And it was interesting. They ended up at a dead end, and it was making his point.
They did.
They did. Yeah. So they have a theme in here, and it's the iPhone effect is what Kevin Stoller calls it. And he says, hypothetically, update the movie. Would certain elements change if it was made today? Are there different social dynamics, technology, character trophies that would shift them to a modern remake?
I don't think anything would shift, to be honest. I mean, I think that's still an issue in under-resourced communities. Whether you've got the technology or not, the schools still don't necessarily have it. You might have it in your hand, but again, they're not taking advantage of that because they're probably being told to put it away. So it's right. But I think the dynamics, I don't see a lot that would actually change, and I'd love to see a remake, but I don't know if you can do it better.
I don't know that they could do it better, but I do wonder, right? Like, what role would technology play in? Like, if you were looking at this, I mean, still same issues, same everything with today's modern technology, like what would change? Would there be different social dynamics? Would there be more of a cross between like the Cholo and the Hispanic gang people and, some of the other cliques? Because, social media plays a lot in the dynamics of education and the way that our young people are connecting. And so oftentimes, like, I see it with my kids. I have a 14-year-old, and I'm like, who are you talking to? And it's this kid I've never heard of, but not necessarily someone that I think she would outwardly say she's talking to or Snapchatting with or whatever. And I'm like, well, if she's your friend, right? Like, she should outwardly be your friend in public. And she's like, yeah, my friends don't like her. So you see the connections that kids make through social media or technology that are resources and relationships, but not necessarily depicted in a school environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I just wonder how it would actually change the dynamics within that.
Right, and it could be, especially iPhones and whatnot, can become tools to help with learning. And you could, that's something where you could see somebody actually taking advantage of the fact that they all have them, where they're probably told to put them away. So that's, here it's a state law now to know no phones are out. But
Oh, really?
yes, and that's has its own issues because some kids have to monitor their blood sugar levels and things with it. So that becomes a whole nother concern you have to deal with. But it's another aspect of taking advantage of the kids where they learn, and most of them are staring at that phone quite a bit.
Oh, I hate the phone. It is like, we just did this thing on a team call and it's like, what would you burn? And I'm like, my phone. I just am so sick of it. But at the same time, you can't live without it, right? I got rid of it, my Apple Watch. I don't know if you noticed, Victoria, but we read a book, Don. We do team learning at K-12, and there was something, anyways, one of the books that we read, I'm like, it's such a distraction that I'm completely getting rid of it. So I only wear it to exercise, but I mean, that's your new form of note passing is that Apple Watch. So
It's so true.
Forget the old school rolling the notes up. Okay, so if you had to substitute or recast a main role, who would it be?
I was thinking Benicio del Toro. He's been in a number of movies. I'd have to look up some. And he was just the first one I could really come to.
Benicio del Toro. I'm going to have to Google him, Don, and see.
No, I am too, actually.
I think I know him because he was in probably one of the Rogue One for Star Wars, and I'm a Star Wars fan. But
okay,
he's been. You'll recognize him. He's a character actor.
Yeah, once we do. So where do you think they are now? So if it was a reunion conversation, like looking at the main characters, because it's a true story, right? Where would they be now?
I went and actually looked up some of that, and I couldn't find like everyone, but those his students went to work for Jet Propulsion Labs. They were working for nonprofits. They became attorneys, and it was not always. It's very interesting. They were not always his students. He pulled them into his class because he thought they could use that knowledge. So they're in all kinds of STEM fields now. And when it was very interesting, he passed away. He had cancer. And he was in Bolivia for a while and then came back home and was staying there really when he was at the end. And his students got together and raised like $17,000 to pay his medical bills. And those are all his former students coming together and been doing a big thing at Garfield High School, showing the impact he had on them.
Yeah, I didn't get that far in Googling, but I'm glad you did. I mean, I guess I was just thinking, where would they be? But you would imagine it takes grit for students to sort of overcome some of those social barriers. And I think there were a lot of social barriers in it. But also, you have the girl, what was it? She's the real quiet one. He went up to and he talked to her.
Anna.
Yeah. So I wondered, where would she be? What would she have been? And would she have been different? Would she have been more assertive? Would she have been, a more dominant force in day-to-day life? Because I think too, as a woman and as the youngest in a Hispanic family, and I didn't have a huge voice when I was a kid. I had older sisters and a mom who had a personality. And so you don't always have that voice when you're a kid. And would she have developed that? And so I'm like, what would she be? An activist, who knows? But
well, I think it's interesting too with Claudia. Claudia was the prettier one. And one of the things that really kind of resonated with me was her mom. She was trying to convince her mom to sign the contract. And she's like, well, you don't really need all this because, if you're too smart, guys won't really want to be around you or pay attention to you. She's like, well, honestly, Mom, the reason I want to do this because I don't want to have to depend on that anyway. I want to be able to do something for myself. And I was like, I love that. That's a great moment.
He changed their lives just by caring.
Well, and it goes to say, it just takes one person, right, with a different perspective and different expectations. Because oftentimes if we're held to an expectation of someone else, we get bogged down by our own. I see it in my life too, of you could be doing something different. And here you are, you're doing something different. You're not afraid to do a podcast. You're not afraid to stand up in front of the classroom or in front of a presentation and put on a presentation. So one person's belief in your capabilities can make all the difference in in what we're capable of doing.
We all seem to have that, at least one person, teacher in our lives that did that.
Have you ever wondered how a simple change in your classroom can revolutionize learning? At K-12, we believe the physical space is key. When we partnered with Gary Community Schools in Indiana, something incredible happened. Their classrooms were outdated and uninspiring. Using our radically student-centered approach, we reimagined their spaces. The transformation was nothing short of amazing. Teachers saw immediate results, students came back from winter break excited, more engaged, collaboration increased, and overall performance improved. One student even shared, "We have new furniture, it's like Christmas all over again." On the first day back, local media came in to cover the story, capturing the joy and excitement of students discovering their new learning environments. See how we can transform your school today. Visit kay-twelve.com to learn more about our innovative approach. K-12, because every student deserves an inspiring place to learn. Visit kay-twelve.com today.
Okay, so you guys, Don and Victoria, y'all go way back. I don't necessarily know the history, right? But you guys have worked together on projects. You've been friends for quite a while, or is it?
We met actually at it was the North Carolina A4LE conference in Winston-Salem, where we met at one of the vendor reception events, and we just got to know one another and really enjoyed the conversation. And he was living in Charleston, and I had lived in Charleston for 6 years, and through our conversation, had the same passion for education, obviously. And he also mentioned that his team designed the home team barbecue that I used to frequent quite a bit. And so that was kind of a fun connection as well. So, but yeah, really just kept in touch year after year after year. And anytime I come down to visit, we have lunch at home team.
Yeah.
Are you still in Charleston then, Don?
Yes.
Okay, Victoria keeps promising me a trip to Charleston. I've never been there. She keeps promising. It's been almost 3 years. It's still not come to fruition. But
it's going to happen this year.
It's home team barbecue. That's where we're going.
Yes.
Well, so Don, tell me, obviously, right, you're with Little Architecture. And when you're looking at, real life insights, perspectives, I mean, podcast is all great and fun. The topic of conversation is great, right? We all want to talk about movies. It's a completely easy thing. But do you have perspectives or something to share that you just want to open up the conversation to?
Well, and I did a presentation at A4LE on this, but again, even when we're designing spaces, we need to be designing them for the kids that are actually going to be in them. And that gets back to meeting kids where they are. Some kids learn individually, some kids learn as a group or as community. Some within a day, somebody might need quiet space, but they may need the group setting at some point too. And conventional spaces don't do that. The cells and bells kind of classroom scenario does not provide that in a conventional sense. So really trying to create these spaces for them, because I think we're missing a lot of students by not doing that, or not giving them the tools to be everything they could be.
Right.
And you're trying to squeeze them into a box that we create, and it may not be where they are going to excel. And that's why that movie just appeals to me so much. It's because he recognized that you can't force those kids to do it your way. You got to come to them and speak to their language, sometimes literally. But so that's where I kind of see that tie into design, and it gets into really that way, you're teaching and everything else. But from our standpoint,
I don't disagree with that. You look at it all the time, and there are, no matter in what environment you're in, you oftentimes have to conform to other people's way of doing things in order to reach them. And it's like the old analogy. I had a counselor one time tell me, and she was just like, "Carla, stand on the chair." And I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever done, but sure, I'm up on the chair, right? And she's like, "Try to pull me up to you." And I was like, "That's impossible. I can't do that." Right. And she's like, "Well, that's what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to pull people to where you're at, and you're never going to drag them along. And so at some point in time, you have to put yourself on even ground with them and change your mindset, because not everyone's going to rise to where you want them to be or to where you are." And I was like, well, thanks. I got to go now.
What a profound
But, right. But I mean, that was like, I think
Right.
22 years ago that,
Right.
that counselor told me that, but it goes along with everything that we do, right. To be able to, and I think that it's a huge element of teaching as well. And in what we do every single day. What we're
And this,
looking
my
at
wife
every day.
is an aside. My wife's a teacher and has been for 20 years or so, but she always got along with the rough kids, those, and because she didn't disrespect them, she just gave them their, voice, and they would treat her the same way back. So and she would be the only one doing it. And everybody's like, what are you doing? But she most of the time didn't have issues with them because it was just showing that respect that they are longing for.
Well,
And
and
again,
you have
it goes back to being human. Yeah.
Well, and I think too, you have to earn the trust of the people around you. And in education, there is, right? I keep talking, I'm like, there's a threshold experience. But when a kid walks through a door of a school, there's something that tells them if they're safe, if they're not, right? And that threshold experience just isn't necessarily as soon as you walk through the door, but it's at interactions. It's walking through the front office. It's walking into an individual classroom. And so we have to gain their trust, even in the design and what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, so that way their environments can depict like that being a safe zone for them to feel secure enough to let their guards down, depending on where they are. And this movie was a great example, but giving them the ability to let go of everything around them and to be able to learn and to be able to absorb it and take it in, right? And that's I think one of the biggest things that we do on a day-to-day basis.
Right. And how you treat those environments. I mean, I think there is a psychological impact that what your environment is around you is going to affect you one way or the other, good or bad. And it says something about who, let's say, designed it or created it, what it means to them and how important it is.
Oh, yeah. The movie is, I'm so glad, Don, that you chose this because I had not seen it. And I've seen, I think, about every 80s movie there is. So for me to have missed this one.
I was wondering how you missed it. But
I know. I was so shocked. So I'm going to rewatch it probably next weekend. Yeah. Because I just felt it was really, it's very heartfelt. It meant a lot to watch it.
Still relevant.
Yeah, I think so many of them are. And if we just look back, the issues don't change, right? The issue in 1987 was still the same issue is like, what students are we teaching to? And then two, how are we reaching them? And to recognize that question, the why and the how hasn't changed in a lot of years. What's the math on that? Y'all are smarter than me.
Right.
But
the whole movie was about math. I'm not going to do it now.
You're the architect.
Like, golly, I don't know. It's like 40 years or something, right? But you look at that and it doesn't change. I mean, the times change, the resources around us change, but the question doesn't, and the answer doesn't change. It's like you're teaching to students, and two, how do you improve that and the why behind it and what do you do? So I think it's continuously, we're just doing the same thing, trying to figure it out.
Well, I think too, there's something to be said for, when you watch a movie that's that many years old and seeing that there's still the same issues. And on this, podcast, we all have the same mindset. We want to change for the better. We want to be that, have that voice for other people. And that's maybe the technology part of it, is that we're able to broadcast this out through our computers and through a podcast and send a message that we can all make a difference and build the trust in our communities and build the trust in our schools and be there to help facilitate new environments for people so that they can learn and teach and be proud and feel safe. And I think that's really important.
Well, that's a good wrap. Victoria, you just closed that up for us so beautifully. So let's just do it. So that is the wrap on today's episode. And thank you so much, Don Baus, for joining us and giving us a deeper dive and a deeper look into Stand and Deliver. I think it's definitely a film that challenges, inspires, and reminds us why the stories behind education matter so much. And Victoria, thank you to you for co-hosting. It's always a joy to have your perspective and passion in the conversation. And then to our listeners, we appreciate you tuning into the Better Learning Podcast. We hope that today sparked some new thinking and left you feeling energized about the impact we all make in the jobs that we do every single day. So don't forget to subscribe to the Better Learning Podcast and visit us at k12.com. So until next time, keep learning, keep leading, and keep building better.
The Better Learning Podcast is produced by Matt Rogers and edited by Kelly Jones. The views and opinions shared on this podcast are those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily represent the perspectives of their affiliated companies, organizations, or associations.